so comfortable with each other. We're trying to decide where to sit. And we're so well prepared, we never got this wrong. Right. A very good morning to everybody in the room. It is amazing to see so many of you here this morning, so thank you very much for coming along. I hope you stay until the end of the day, because I'm just going to add to what the MCs have said, because the sessions today were very carefully curated, and it was intended to sort of cover the competition issues which are really current, as well as to link it into trade. Trade is a practice that no other law firm in our region does it the same way as us. So we do it very much in the same way as the international practices. And trade cuts a lot into competition law. There's a lot of overlap as well from a regulatory perspective, but more of trade later. Now, we have roughly, I can't do my math, we have roughly an hour and 30 minutes. I thought we had an hour and 15 minutes, so it's not my math. What I wanted to very quickly start off with here is my Malaysian managing partner, Yu Chen, said, one of his questions was, do I have the right audience in the room? And I thought, brilliant question. Exactly what a lawyer would ask, exactly what a lawyer would be thinking about. But you see, when you do competition law, there is no wrong audience. When you do competition law, every one of you, whether you're a lawyer, you are in business, whether you do M&A work, whether you do sales, whether you do distribution, whether you are an executive on the board, you need to know competition law. At least enough basics so that as counsel, if you're advising the board doesn't make a mistake, the company doesn't make a mistake, business doesn't make a mistake, and so on and so forth. So there is no wrong audience. It's always a right audience. Now, with that, let me get into the presentation itself. We're talking about cartels today. And again, I'm not sure how many of you have been doing competition law for how many years, but Malaysia is definitely one of the countries where there are a lot of investigations, and you've had your cartel investigations over the years. And the regulator in Malaysia makes no bones about saying that they will go after parties who violate the law. So he's quite clear about it. Now, if I look at the rest of the countries, and I will pass it on to my colleagues soon, but if I look at the rest of the countries, when we talk about cartels, it's domestic cartels as well as international cartels. And until the year 2017, roughly, there were many international cartels. So coming out of Singapore, I was very fortunate to work in many of the international cartels, which spilled into Singapore as well. But then it died down. And it died down, we don't know exactly why, but one of the reasons is because of follow-on action. So when you have a cartel, you price fix, or you bid rig or something, you cause a loss to someone out there. When you cause a loss to someone, that person's going to sue you. And there are currently many pending actions in the UK, in Amsterdam, if I'm not wrong, in the US, and several other countries, Germany included. There are many pending actions. It hasn't come into our region yet. But because of those actions, it appears that cartel activities dropped. It could be COVID, I don't know. However, the biggest cartel, I kind of joke about this, but the biggest cartel to me are the competition regulators. So the competition regulators are part of this association called the International Competition Network, ICN for short. And there have been many discussions about how can they increase the number of investigations, cartel discoveries. And around about 2022, there have been a lot more international cartels starting up. They're coming along. So in keeping with what's happening in Malaysia, some of the regional countries are also increasing their number of cartels. So it is an important topic, which is why we thought we'll start off the day with this particular topic. Now, if you look at the synopsis, which you all have, we're looking at what cartels are all about, and then we'll go into how cartels are uncovered, issues of dawn raids, issues of what do you do in a dawn raid, issues of whether you need to be thinking about leniency, and not all countries here have leniencies, and so on. I'm giving you a very big picture overview there. Now with that, let me get into the specific discussion points that we want to talk about today. So, I'm going to start off with my partner on the other end, See Ting, because she's Malaysian and she's the expert here. You know, just to start off with this question first, what is caught as cartels? What do cartels even mean? And in Malaysia specifically, would collaborations also be caught within the definition of cartels? Maybe then after you, we can just go down the line very quickly. Thanks, See Ting.
Okay, sure. Hello. Hi, good morning, everyone. Whether or not you think you are the right audience, you have no choice. You are here and you have to listen to us. Okay. Right, that's a good question. Okay, for Malaysia, just looking at the Competition Act as it stands right now, and just to let you know, we are expecting major amendments to the Competition Act. That major amendments have been in waiting for some time. All right, there was a public consultation paper of the potential amendments, but after that, I believe MyCC has gone back to work with the Aegis department to reconsider the proposed amendments. So we know from the publicly available information what some of the potential amendments could be, but we cannot be certain. Yeah, that's what I would like to say. But fundamentally, our Malaysian Competition Act is very similar to the EU competition laws. We've got, as a core of this, prohibition on anti-competitive agreements in Section 4. Right. Now, that prohibition on anti-competitive agreements catches both horizontal agreements and vertical agreements. So ours, unlike like in Singapore where they have exemptions for vertical agreements, we don't. We apply, as in the EU, horizontal agreements and vertical agreements are all caught if they are significantly prevent, restrict, or distort competition in the market. To start off with, on cartels itself, we have a Section 4.2. Section 4.2 deems certain hardcore activities as significantly anti-competitive. So it shifts the onus on you, all right, if you have done any of this. And this, the four categories are as follows: price fixing or fixing of trading conditions, market sharing, limiting output, technological developments or investments or market access, as well as bid rigging. So these are what we call the hardcore cartel activity. The CEO of MyCC has been said that these are, the supreme evil, all right, citing the EU laws, supreme evil, all right, of competition law. So they take a seriously very hard stance on this. And just to let you know, the latest round of cartel activities for price fixing by the chicken feed cartel group totals 415 million ringgits amongst 5 different companies. 450 million ringgits. The largest fine was one of the public listed ones, 100 over million ringgits. So it's very serious. Cartel activities, hardcore cartel activities are very serious. But to Kala's other question also, but what if it's, you say, look, you are in, let's say, let's call the chicken cartel again, chicken feed manufacturers. They want to do something with another chicken feed manufacturer. They want to collaborate. So is that okay? Are they, is it just those 4 activities that I told you, the 4 hardcore, that's a problem? No, because our Section 4 is wide enough to catch any significantly anti-competitive agreement, whether or not they are hardcore cartels. Okay, so potentially, yes, it could also be caught, but in those cases, depending, all right, if it's not what we call anti-competitive by object, but there's a need for MyCC to then analyze to decide whether, from an effects position, it significantly restricts and distorts competition in the market or not. One other thing you need to know, MyCC's guidelines provide some sort of safe harbor where it says if two competitors, or two or more competitors collaborate and have an agreement, generally if the market shares of these competitors are less than 20%, MyCC may consider it's not significantly anti-competitive. So this is for agreements, joint venture agreements, for example. The MyCC's Chapter 1 guidelines also refers to things like standardization agreements, right? In EU, right now, with AI coming up, perhaps you want to apply the technology and, to save time or R&D, you want to be first in the market, you collaborate with your competitors so that you can quickly, come up with some innovation in the market. Is that okay or not? So we have this thing called Section 5, where under there you could have, if what you're doing is anti-competitive, but it can bring benefits, all right, including from a social perspective, you could then justify it, all right, notwithstanding is anti-competitive. So the other thing you also need to know, Mars and AirAsia, this is a famous Mars and AirAsia case. They actually had a collaboration agreement. We all know Mars and AirAsia, they are both airlines operating out of Malaysia, right? Collaboration agreement, but they were, and MyCC did fine them 10 million ringgits each for entering into what they call a market sharing agreement. But the agreement was, as you know, all lawyers prepare agreements, right? It's not just one clause, many, many clauses, right? Focusing on things which, as expressed, is meant to be for efficiency purposes, yeah? But there was a clause that says Mars will focus on the premium side, AirAsia will focus on the low-cost side. And then subsequently, following that, Firefly cancelled some routes to East Malaysia. And MyCC found that sufficient, all right, to go after Mars and AirAsia. So it was a collaboration agreement. So be careful. It could be an issue. Be mindful that competition law applies. So you know where to find us.
Before I pass it on to Supawat Srii Ting, can I ask you to hold on to the mic and just follow through, right? Because you kept talking about agreements, then you talked about collaboration. What if I don't have an agreement in place? What if, coming here as counsel or as a business person outside over hot chocolate or coffee and over the yummy kaya curry puffs, I was having a discussion about, times are tough, but interest rates are coming down, and I think this is what I'm going to do for my business. And I'm talking about that to a few people, and some are potentially competitors. They're not necessarily actual competitors. Could that give rise to a cartel, Srii Ting?
You like to ask those really difficult ones. Okay, if assuming, right, it's not a potential competitor, but if it's a competitor, right, then it depends on what Kala is saying. So let's say I'm a competitor to Kala, right, and she's sharing a lot of information which I would consider commercially sensitive. It could be information about her plans, the future plans, strategic plans. It could be information about future investments, information about a strategic customer and what contracts they could be going into, right? So even things like that, potentially, all right, it could be significantly anti-competitive by effect. So the sharing of commercially sensitive information between competitors as well as potential competitors could be a problem in Malaysia, but it depends on what is shared. Now, if you share pricing information, MyCC's guidelines is clear that that could then become a price-fixing agreement. So competitors, whatever happens, do not ever share pricing information. That is clearly off. Best with competitors, you don't talk about anything except football, badminton, whatever, anything except your business. That's the advice.
Thanks, Srii Ting. So perfect answer there. Just be careful what you discuss. And potential competitors as well, because The idea, and I'll just leave you with this thought, the idea is, in many cases in the EU and various other countries have said that, is once a competitor plants a thought in your head, that thought's going to stay in your head. And any business decision you make is going to be influenced by that thought. So you're no longer independent. You potentially have a cartel or an anti-competitive agreement in place. I do not exaggerate. That's the state of the law. Supawat, if I pass it on to you.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. So, listen to what See Ting said. I just want to share more from different angles. What happened in Thailand this day, I would say, in terms of cartels or collaborations between competitors or your peers in the market. I think right now, if you talk about number of, I don't want to use the word investigation, but at the state of fact findings by OTCC, Office of Trade Competitions Commissions, the numbers of fact-finding stage that they are working on is increasing rapidly. That's quite a bad news to business. But the good news for Thai business these days, they have a, I don't want to use the word legitimate reason, but because we are under pressures to compete with foreigners. For example, Chinese companies that bring in so many products into Thailand, a perfect alibis. I mean, like a perfect reason for collaboration between Thai business is if we don't collaborate with each other, we die. So that's the reason. I mean, you probably it's not just like very stressed reason to explain to OTCC, but it's become something that even OTCC these days get pressures from the government or even private sector to give some flexibilities to the business in order to work hand in hand to compete with the threat from outside of the countries. So, but it doesn't mean you can do anything, to fight or strike back with your competitor. I mean, from outside of Thailand. You also need to bear in mind that you may have more flexibilities when OTCC come to investigation or do the fact-finding, but you also need to prepare how far you can go with your competitors. That's the thing that I would like to share. I mean, maybe I pause here first.
Ingrid, if I jump to you now. Indonesia is probably at the moment one of the most, if not the most active regulator in terms of all kinds of investigations. So hearing and learning from Indonesia in terms of the cartel side of the house, could you share, please?
Yeah, thank you, Kala. Good morning, everyone. Under the Indonesian competition law, there are at least 5 activities caught as cartel. First is price fixing, second is market allocation, third is output restriction, 4 is boycott, and 5 is horizontal bid bridging. And as for the collaboration Kala, actually the KPPU, although it is not explicitly stated in their regulations, actually they recognize that now, either in a formal or informal meeting with the KPPU, they recognize basically that not all collaborations are anti-competitive. Joint ventures, strategic alliances, or other type of collaborations among competitors can promote efficiency, innovation, and consumer benefits. However, this collaboration can be deemed illegal if they lead to price fixing, market allocation, and other type of cartel behavior covered by the Indonesian competition law. So I think the key aspect here is to, in assessing the legality of the collaborations among competitors, is the intent behind them. If the collaborations aims to enhance efficiency without reducing competition, so that basically that collaborations are generally allowed under Indonesian competition law. But if the collaborations aims to reduce competition or has a fact to limit the competition, those collaborations has a high risk to be considered as cartel activities, and thus has a high risk of violating Indonesian competition law. Kala.
You're holding the mic, Ingrid. Just one more question. I don't think it's unique to Indonesia, but just on bid rigging, right? It's one of the cartel activities. But when we think about bid rigging, and we have been talking about competitors, so it's, we want to do a tender, we both discuss, and then we submit the tender. That's bid rigging. But Indonesia could catch a guy on the top as well, right? The guy calling the tender. Maybe we can explain that a little bit, because that's something very serious. And it could happen in each of our countries as well. But Indonesia, it's expressly stated.
Yeah. In Indonesia, bid rigging actually has two types of conduct. Yeah. First is horizontal bid rigging. It is like Kala said, it's a collusion between the in the tender participants, and also Indonesian competition law regulates the vertical bid rigging. It's actually a collusion between the tender participants and also the owner of the procurement itself. Yeah, sometimes it's debatable whether this issue is related to the corruption issue or competition issue, but in terms of precedent, the KPPU not only impose fine sanction on the horizontal bid rigging, but also on the vertical bid rigging. Kala.
Thanks very much, Ingrid. So that's something to take note of. When you look at the vertical bid rigging, that's not really a cartel. It's an anti-competitive agreement, but it could come up in each of our countries as well, even though it's not expressly talked about. Now, before I go on to Kueh, just as a gentle reminder, if you have questions, please feel free to get the QR code and put them. We've got one or two already. Send the questions through so that we can deal with those. But better still, sort of yell out from wherever you are and ask the question as well. I'm blind because I'm not wearing my specs, but I will hear you if you yell out. So please do ask questions. With that, Kueh, what's the position in Vietnam in terms of cartels?
Thanks, Kala. Good morning, everyone. So maybe I'm the last one talking about cartel activities here. So like other countries, Malaysia or Indonesia, Thailand, so Vietnam, we do have certain regulations governing these activities, like the competitions law and the implementation guidance, where we have the decree. But then it seems to everyone that Vietnam has 11 acts that might be causing as the anti-competitive activities. So hardcore activities relating to cartels like Malaysians or EU, we have the big riggings and restrictions of non-cartel participations enter into the market, or removing them from the market if they don't agree to attending the cartels agreement. And then further to that, we will allocating into two different types. One is horizontal cartel, and then one is the vertical cartels. So out of these 11 activities, not all of them are per se prohibited, but then some of them are conditionally considered as a cartel activities. So the authority here, VCC, is actually they have to look at whether the activities is really causing the restriction on the competitiveness in the market before they decide whether there's a violations. So what is the criteria for them to assess? Let's say that for vertical cartels activities, so for vertical cartels activities, they have to look at the participation parties Each of them, if it is less than 50% of the market shares, so that could be a safe ratio for them to conduct the activities. But if it is look at the horizontal activities, and then they will look at, the authority will look at the combined market shares of all participants in the agreements. So where it is less than 5%, then it could be safe. But again, here it comes to the questions where the collaboration will causing, how the collaboration between the parties will be causing as a cartel from the authorities' perspective. So I think not necessarily like Indonesians or Malaysians sharing that we do need to have a certain agreements for assessment, but what we do see from many of our client cases, we have business associations in Vietnam. Different sectors, we will have a different business associations. And as a members, many of the FDI entities in Vietnam, they will attend as members for this business association. So in the morning discussion or tea break, they also, that a number of different enterprises, members, leaders of companies, leaders, or representatives there, they might discuss about how to develop, what is the next plan for the next quarter, or how do we do about this trend or global trend impact to Vietnam market. So that whether those discussions will capture a risk for the authority to look at, are you discussing something for cartel agreements? So this is something that we normally advise the client to see, that as long as you're sitting in the discussion and we starting to see there are some hint or some direction to talking about the business plan, about the market, about the shares, about the market shares, or even about the price planning. So it is to be safe that whether we can attend or whether we just say that we notice and we come back to join later if any formal discussion is circulated. So because might be some of the cases the authority will look at the participants in the list of the business association minutes of the meeting, and they might see that, you have representative to join in this discussion. And coincidentally, later on, it happens somewhere that the market shares or the price is different, it's going up. So, it is something that we can say not necessarily to be a written agreement to cause the risk for cartel, but at least if you discuss and talking about some sensitivity topic, and then later on it might cause, so for collaboration, it is hard to say yes or no, but it is advisable that if you attending some discussion which is might be risky, and then should reach out to your competition advisor, and we are here for all of you to advise on different jurisdiction. Yeah.
Thanks, Kwee. Now, a couple of questions already, so if you have more questions, please put them on. I'm going to take the questions, but just very, very quick summary, right? We've spent the first 20-25 minutes or so talking about what cartel is, and in a sense going back to 101 in terms of what it really is all about. The fundamental element is, so long as you're engaging in any form of fixing of a price, of a term of condition, a credit term, anything at all which removes the independence of your business, potentially you get into a cartel situation. The requirements are slightly different in each country. They are important to know because they are nuanced. And when we advise businesses, we tend to take the position that, hey, this one, maybe in Malaysia it's okay for you to do, but Singapore cannot, or vice versa. Or maybe Vietnam, you can push the boundaries, but you can't in Thailand. So we go into the nuances to be able to do that and not just necessarily take a one-size-fits-all. Of course, with some companies, they do go with a one-size-fits-all. It's risk appetite of businesses. Another quick point I wanted to leave you with is Singapore. It's very similar to what everyone has said, but if it is what we call a blacklisted activity, so that's price fixing, market sharing, output limitation, how much you put into the market, and bid rigging. For each of this, you might be a 1% shareholder in the market. So long as you're agreeing with another 1% shareholder in the market, we have a cartel. And we have had several of those cases in the market. Okay. Before we move on to the sort of next set of issues, let's address these questions because I think they are very important. Picking up the second one that you see there first, and maybe See Ting, if I start with you, because I sort of posed a difficult question to you, right? If competitors are really sharing past price information, price trends, and so on, it's past. Is this going to be a problem? Is this anti-competitive? Can we use an intervening body, third party, to do this? See Ting?
Okay. Past price information is definitely better than current or future price information. But it depends really, how old is this past information, right? Does it allow you to still hazard a guess, right? Or come to some intelligent hint, right? That what is the price likely to be that's applicable now in the future. So as a very general proposition, there are case laws around, not in Malaysia yet, but from EU, where, you could say perhaps after 2 years, that information could be outdated and of no relevance anymore, right? But it could be that kind of timing as what is safe. And whether or not you can use a third party, the answer is no. That one in Malaysia, even there are cases where software providers who are the intermediaries between the provision of information to various competitors can also be caught together with the competitors themselves. So the answer is no. You should not just say using a third party will save you. Okay, hope I answered that.
Anyone else? Any thoughts?
For Thailand, I think the answer is depend. I mean, when you said past informations, for example, the price that you sell last year during October to December, something like that. It should be okay if your product is like cars or something that quite fancy. But if you talk about agricultural products, it's become it's a bit like a rainy season, summer season, thing like that. The price is like up and down. Maybe summer next year, the price go back to the same price as summer last year. So if you share past information about the price summer last year, and it may help the whole network to prepare for the price for the next summer, the upcoming summer. So that can be problems, yes, in my view.
So before we go on to the next question, just share a couple of more thoughts. You might have been hearing about the onion cartel from the Philippines, the chicken cartel from Singapore, from Malaysia, and so on and so forth, agricultural, right? Or some form of food product. Many of these came about not because they were blatantly fixing prices, but because they were sharing trends and so on. So it is something that happens often enough in terms of the sharing and the proximity, the timing of sharing. Just to give you a couple of other examples, if you are from the hotel industry, information which is a month old could be history. Information which is 2 weeks old could be history, and you can share because it's a fungible and it dies very quickly. But if you're an FI, interest rates may take a bit more, maybe 3 months, 6 months. If you are selling property, real estate, then maybe 1 year kind of thing. So it really varies and there's no one size fits all. So something to take note of. Okay? Just moving on to the next question in line. When it comes to new technology, certain authorities require that manufacturers share P&C information to the government amongst the manufacturers. So it's sharing to the government and amongst manufacturers because they want to create more awareness on the technology to try and determine what kind of incentives can be provided to try and ensure that you're developing the right kind of technology? It's a very good question, and we are probably not going to do justice to it in a very short period. But as we talk about collaborations, Kuei is going to pick this one up. Thanks, Kuei.
Thanks, Kala, and to the attendants who raised the questions. It's very interesting and very key and very hard questions that we receive from some of the clients. So there are two points here to discuss. One is the requirement from the authorities about the information that has been raised. And the second key point is sharing among the manufacturers the information. So, so for the first point, I think it is key that we have to identify, because in Vietnam, maybe a little bit different from other countries, we are socialist country. And socialist country means that the authority have superpower in doing so many things that sometimes that the enterprises is very scary and they don't know how to handle it, because it is something that is unlike other unsocialist country. So again here, when you receive a request, so you have to identify whether this request is formally right and formally competent. So are they the right one to ask you to request or to perform those sharing information? Because there are different authorities in Vietnam. Let's say one manufacturers, they might be governing the reporting line is the Department of Industry and Trade, or they also belonging to other different authorities for governing their activities. So we are having a different reporting regimes. So if it is relating to these reporting regimes clearly requiring by the law, it is a must that you have to comply. And the things that in the report, the information sharing therein, you might have to be cautious, because when you prepare the information, if you get the information from other competitors or from other participants in the same market with you, for example, like vertical players in the market, and you share it in your report without legally evidence that how you get it, maybe from public sources, that might cause also issues. So again here, back to the obligations, whether we need to report and we share the information based on the requirements of the authority. So it is a yes, if this authority is the right one that you have been defined under the law, it is your obligation. But if it is not relevant, and it might be saying that you have to politely to say that whether we need to know what is the reason that we have to report, because we already report to this authority. And might be, if necessarily, may we address this regards to the authority, whether they can link you up with the report earlier that we have submitted. So it also comes to the downward that later on we discuss, because not anyone can come in to knock your door and say, hey, we're coming in and we have investigation. This is the same issues that whether we need to report. So come to the second point is whether be among the manufacturers, we need to share the information. So this is very sensitive issues, because among the manufacturers, it is right if we're sharing about the trend, we're sharing about the technology in general and in a very general basis. But if to come to the certain extent that you're starting to say that because of this technology, I'm going to cut off how many of my employees, which causing that I can reduce how many costs of my manufacturing costs and all of the cost per products. So, and then my price going to the market will be down for how many percent? Or might be because of this technology, I'm going to scale down my business in the North market, in the Southern market, and then because of this discussion, causing some certain impact to the competitive in the market, then it would be an issue. So we are not supposed to share the information among the manufacturers in any perspective, if it is just for reference. Because that if this is a discussion for general information only, they can be conducted in the business association that I have just mentioned before. But other than that, we don't have any obligations that we have to send an email or we have to send an official letter to other manufacturers to say that we are going to use this, use that. So because this question is quite general, so I'm just on a general basis to define 2 key points. So come back to the takeaway is that if manufacturers sharing information, we have to be cautious how it would be conducted and on what basis the information should be limited in order to be safe for us, not to be challenging for the cartel agreements or we have causing any anti-competitive activities. Yeah.
Thanks, Kwee. Supawat.
Actually, I couldn't agree with Kwee more on what you mentioned, and actually it's happened in Thailand as well. You know, in Thailand, I mean, your product, you produce one product. Your product may be subject to scrutinies by so many regulators. And actually, the case that I'm about to say is not related to technologies or IT stuff, but it's quite similar in to these situations. You know, authorities ask you, I mean, one authority asks you to share information to them. And it's not just you, they ask your competitor, almost all of competitors, including you, to share information to them. Clients came to us and asked whether we can share, and I said we try to defend, we try not to share to the government, that authority, because we said, okay, the way you collect information will let everybody in the market know about our information and our competitor information. So we couldn't, because we were in breach of competition law. The way they respond is very interesting, and I have no answer to this kind of behavior. But what they said is, oh, okay, we know, it may be, you may be subject to this regulation, like anti-regulations, competition regulation. But if you don't share to us, we have no choice. We have to put you in a control goods list, meaning they can control your price. So this is something that is quite give some pressures on business. Yeah, when we have to decide whether we want to share or not to share information. Yeah.
So that's the power of the regulator, right? And again, it comes from nuances from different countries. Now, Ingrid, I was going to save another question for you, but because there were a few similar questions, the one that's highlighted, which is also similar point, it's becoming common for customers to share prices of other suppliers to negotiate the prices. So your customer comes to you and says, hey, this guy is giving me this, so how? Can you give me this better price or not? They use the customer price, right? But sometimes you ask your customer, hey, so show me what you get elsewhere, and maybe on that basis we can work. So the price sharing is not competitor to competitor, but rather you're doing it through your customer. Indonesia can or not?
Okay. Basically, it depends. Yeah, it depends. If that share, we have if that practice results in price fixing, market allocation, output restriction, and other activities defined as cartel in Indonesia, that activities, sharing information through the distributors will be caught as cartel under Indonesian competition law. So I think every companies, although they have distributors, and the distributors sometimes like sharing, oh, this company offers me the better price than you. Please don't let that information as the basis for you to determine your future pricing strategy or your promotion or anything. Yeah, of course you can consider that, but you have to make it, you have to decide it independently without any coordination with other competitors in the market. Because once it leads to the price fixing, market allocation, and other type of cartel behavior, there will be they will have a high risk to violate Indonesian competition law. Yeah.
Kueh, please.
Yeah, thank you, Kala. So just follow up on these interesting points, because in Vietnam we do have so many similar cases, especially for those who come to us asking for our legal services, and then they say, hey, someone is less than you. So let's say that how we deal with that. So exactly in Vietnam, it is not permitted that sharing price and then coming to the end that you use the competitor's price to decide your fair price and fix your price. But we do have a very legitimate third party to do the market survey. They are licensed to do market survey. They can directly come to different competitors in one sector. They get all of the price. But then when we get the information, how we should pose our request to them, say that I want to get all of the price of these products, but don't give me the name of the specific suppliers. Let's say that it is a range. I know that it is the minimum, it is the maximum. I know everyone's doing in the market is from this range, but no specifically is addressing like me. A company is how much US dollars, B company is how much US dollars. This is not something that we recommend it for. But on a general basis, come back to the clients. They might be considered as this is a third party providing you the price of your competitors, but you say that, okay, I hear you, I know that you want to have a certain better price than what you have been offered, but don't let us know exactly who is offering you. Just let us know that this is the range, and then we might consider. That is what something that we normally advise to the clients, that you don't talk directly with the specific names displaying. That is safer. But it's as long as you get it and you processing the information with the specific information of the competitors or the vertical distributors, and then very risky for you to handle the information relating to price. Yeah, just my sharing.
See Ting, before we leave this topic, can I ask you the Malaysian side of it?
Yeah.
For the one highlighted in yellow and the one below that, if you
Yeah.
can read it.
Okay. I thought you probably want to know the Malaysian scenario. So for the one on sharing required by regulator, right? Under the Malaysian Competition Act, there is a clear exception if the anti-competitive conduct is required by law. Now, I have to share with you, there was a case, right, which is the General Insurers of Malaysia, right, and all the insurers, and MyCC. So MyCC brought action against all these insurers. Really, the insurers were alleged to have fixed trading terms against the workshop association. So one of the insurers' defenses was that, look, we were told by Bank Negara, all right, and that's in Malaysia's parlance, super regulator, right? Bank Negara to deal with this workshop people to come to some lending, because the workshop association was forcing the insurers to try and reach some position, all right, to allow the workshop association to be happy with the price that they felt they were being squeezed by the insurers. So because Bank Negara didn't want this, consumers to be affected, they told their regulators, which are the insurers, to try and solve the problem. So under Bank Negara's auspices, they met the workshop people a few times and finally came up with some terms that between the workshop people and the insurers, they could agree on, right? But this point, all right, of Bank Negara directing the regulators was rejected by MyCC, because under Malaysian law, it's like required by law, right, has a certain meaning based on case law. You cannot just say the regulator told me. Did the regulator exercise its power correctly and in pursuance to some power conferred on the regulator or not? If so, then you can arguably say it's by law, right? The regulator themselves, pursuant to a section of the whatever act that conferred on them the power, then directed using that specific power for you to do so. But if it's not, right, even regulator says, oh, all of you please come informal session for discussions. We would like you all to share this information so that, it's good for us to, or we can then assess. The right way to do is this, that information should be anonymized. You can share with the regulator, but there's no reason why a regulator should be sharing with all of you. or if it has to be shared, then do it in such a way, clean it up so that you can't tell who did what, right? So that's the way to protect commercially sensitive information, so that you don't know what your competitors are up to. That's a proper way to deal with it. And on the second question, I tend to agree with all my other countries. It's the same. You shouldn't be doing this as trying to get all your competitors' prices by using your customers and all that. If customers come to you on a specific thing, all right, and say, hey, there are some competitors, I've got another quote for X price, right? There's no need to know who is it and for what purpose. So you shouldn't do it systematically to collect information on your competitors' prices.
Thanks, See Ting. There's a number of very good questions. I'm just going to add a couple of points and maybe provide quick answers to something before we segue into the next big area we want to talk about. Just in relation to collaborations, right? One of the questions that's on screen is how can you set sort of proper cadence for say, the sales team to comply with? Or how can you put in processes at the end of the day to ensure that if you're sharing information, because there's a legitimate reason, it is still managed so that you do not get into a case of cartel? Short answer is sales team should not be receiving outright sales information. The guy who's going out to sell should not be knowing exactly what volume a competitor is selling, what price they are selling at, and so on and so forth, because that's what creates the problem. Instead, and I know it sounds a little bit artificial when we try and explain to business, but it can be done. Instead, what you should do is the data collection is collected behind the scenes by, I don't necessarily say clean team, but it's done by a different team, not directly having the front face, the sales as such. And that way, when data is collected, then you have to massage it in such a way that you cannot trace back who is what and so on. And using that data that way is possible. But it needs to be historical data. Okay? If anyone here works in Japanese companies, you know this is their prime way of dealing with things. And they would always prepare reports into a single sheet of paper, setting out everything that has been collected in a summary manner, but it's incredible how they manage to get everything into a single sheet of paper. That sort of situations has landed many a Japanese company in cartel scenarios across the world. So just do be careful. A related point in terms of just let me pull it up very quickly, the one that's highlighted right now, in terms of cost, pricing, R&D information required to be shared between developers to promote collaborations. Actually, I don't need to share price. I don't need to share cost for collaboration purposes. What I need to share is my R&D expertise that comes out of it, and then I build in proper non-disclosures. Why is cost even relevant? You might say, but cost is relevant so that we know how to peg the price and so on eventually. Yes, maybe, but not as a matter of habit, not as a matter of a common play thing. So anyone who says that we are being asked to share all of this information, there's more to it. Don't. And you will need to take a step back and restructure what's being requested for. Sharing can take place for the purposes of innovation, for purposes of improving, for economic efficiencies, but not things like cost and so on. There's certain fundamentals that you never share. So just wanted to put that out there as well. Final one before we leave this, and the other questions we'll come back to later, is the one on tenders, which Ingrid spoke about, and I'm just going to ask her to touch on it again. For tenders, does collusion on pricing to end customers between the distributor and the principal be considered as bid rigging?
Yeah, under Indonesian competition law, it is very unique. Yeah, for tender cases, the relevant market is only that tender process. So if there is a collusion on pricing, the KPP will not assess the impact of that collusion into the market. They just assess the impact that collusion in that tender process. Based on that conclusion, the KPP easily will conclude this tender process resulting, will be considered anti-competitive impact. They just check it like whether there is a similarity in documents and also the patterns. The KPP, the bid raging cases in Indonesia more about the fact findings instead of the anti-competitive effect issues that the KPPU must prove. So it is very. That's why I've told Kala that based on the KPPU's annual report in 2023, tender cases is the is the most or the most number cases imposed fine sanction by the KPPU.
And such a scenario can potentially be a violation in all of our countries as well. So not just Indonesia. Indonesia is blatant. And bid rigging cases in particular are super low-hanging fruits. We've had cases in Singapore time and time again where the errors in one tender are copied over into another tender. Surely two people can't make exactly the same mistake, right? So it's evidence of a bid rig already. So that's something to watch the space. Let me sort of segue in the next sort of final bits into investigations. And maybe See Ting, we start off with you, if that's okay. What should businesses do, or what should a business do if it is found to be engaging in a cartel? And if it's not really truly a cartel, it's an anti-competitive arrangement, activity, what do they do? Is it the same? Is it different? Do they run off and do a leniency if your country has leniency? Over to you.
All right. So if you're in the unfortunate situation of advising your company because it's in a cartel situation, definitely leniency in Malaysia is possible, right? But before you run off and plead leniency, get more facts. What role did your organization play in this cartel? If it's a ringleader, according to MyCC's guidelines on leniency, you're not entitled to leniency. So really please don't just run off, right? Establish first the role. You may also want to see and call on an anonymous basis, and MyCC has a hotline for anonymous calls, right? To just check whether anyone has put in, the leniency before you, right? So leniency is a cartel between different competitors. So competitor A, B, C, all right, were in a, let's say, price fixing cartel. But someone else may have ran off to plead leniency before you. The first person who pleaded leniency, all right, who's not the ringleader, can be entitled up to 100% discount on the penalties. So that's the one you want. For the next one, not so easy. You've got to show you've contributed something. You brought something to the table for MyCC, all right? Meaning you gave them extra evidence, all right, that showed for example, a longer duration of the cartel, or that there were more players in this cartel. So you've got to bring in new. So the onus for the second one is not so easy, all right? You've got to bring something new to the table. Otherwise, the first one gets a leniency. You get, whatever proportionate based on what you brought to MyCC, okay? So leniency, be careful, all right? Do consider it. Right now, there's no leniency for non-cartel, non-hardcore cartel activities. But that is something based on the public consultation paper, MyCC wants to amend in the Competition Act to also allow leniency for all conduct, not just hardcore cartel. Okay, so we'll look forward to that to see whether it allows that. Then for other non-cartel type of situation, what happens? So you review as counsel, all right, an agreement, and you find there are things like, let's say, resale price maintenance, all right, or exclusivity clauses, and you think, look, this could be a problem, right? So what do? So first thing is you assess, is it really a problem or not, all right, from a competition point of view. If it is, then your advice is probably, can we see what we can do to cease this anti-competitive agreement, all right, at least that anti-competitive clause, right, to see what can be done to stop, because if not, the clock doesn't stop, and when you have to pay the fines, it's based on the duration of the infringement, yeah? The other thing that you can consider is whether you want to give an undertaking to MyCC, but that's a bit risky because you're then going to them with, possible evidence that they didn't know about. So that's not something I would really advise unless they come knocking on your doors. Then you may want to ask for an undertaking that, try and resolve it through an undertaking instead of being found and investigated for a wrongful act. MyCC will only accept it if they think it's pretty borderline case on their side. Their case is not strong. Right? Otherwise, there's no reason. They will just go ahead and throw the full, all the book at you. Yeah.
Supawat, any thoughts on this?
Okay, for leniency, things is very easy for me to answer because Thailand, we don't have leniency program. So very easy, don't think about it. So, but in terms of investigations, I would say because we don't have leniency program, you don't have to be in rush in order to declare yourself and take benefit from being the first one to accept that you commit something wrong. So you should take your times to think about it. When the issue pop up, when you receive the letter from the authorities, Thai authority, OTCC, saying that you may be in breach of this provision, cartel provisions or other provision under Thai Trade Competition Act, just be calm and think about possibilities that can happen. And before you submit anything, because in Thailand, normally we do, they do the investigation through the submissions. After a bunch of documents, you may have to talk to them later on, but normally start with submission of information document from your side. So you have to go through the document properly, because from my own experience, you will be in trouble with the Thai authorities based on two major reasons. The evidence, you will be in trouble by the evidence, your competitor feeding information to the regulators. Because it's very hard to regulate, it is very hard for the regulator to go to search for something and do things by themselves, because there are thousands of complaints putting on their desk. But normally, competitor is the one that drive all the investigation by feeding information to the regulators. Okay, that's we cannot control. But the second thing that we can control is normally the investigators or the authority use our information against ourselves. I work on one case that they keep asking information like 5 times, 6 times, 7 times. We feel that they just want us to provide some conflicting documents in order for them to use that against us. But we go back to our theory that, okay, we need time. So for example, they say 30 days, you have to provide this within 7 days. We ask for 15. They ask you to submit in 15 days, we ask for 30. And normally it's okay. So we spend time and go through things, and then we submit document with some, a little bit, we provide further information, but we make sure that it won't contradict to what we previously submit. That's the key for explaining, yourself to the authorities. Thank you.
So what he just said is asking for extensions on a rolling basis. It's like, yeah, we'll get it to you, but can we have, some info given to you in a week, another bit given to you in 3 weeks? Sometimes you're lucky, you hit jackpot, the regulator says okay. Other times they say no. But it's something we try.
And one thing, timing-wise, is very important, because sometimes, when things happen, it's in the media, it's in, everywhere. So it's put a lot of pressure on the government, the authority. But if we buy times, for example, 2 months later, 3 months later, something new pop up in Thai media, so our issue will become somewhere no one want to listen to. Yeah.
Again, local nuances. So very important to understand that. Now, before I move on to Ingrid and Kueh, can I just go back to See Ting for that highlighted question, right? What should a business do if they believe there is a bid rigging tender in the tender process that they are conducting? So this is the party calling for the tender. They think that there is bid rigging going on. What should they do? Should they go and complain to MICC, redo a tender?
Yeah, I suppose they can complain to MICC. That would be something definitely to do, and they can recall another tender if that was failed, right? The complaints of MICC, I think, would be taken very seriously. MICC has, in the past 2 years, said very clearly its focus is on bid rigging, because it's part of this, I suppose, the Madani government and trying to eliminate corruption, and making it all efficient, for the government. So a lot of government procurement contracts in the past 6 months, 3 decisions, 2 proposed decisions have been issued, 1 final decision, right? So these were government contracts for everything from MINDEF to Perbadanan Putrajaya Corporation to JKR, right? So the government is aware that they're overpaying by virtue of bid rigging. So be very, very careful. Don't participate in this.
And just drawing a parallel, in Singapore, we have a very similar issue. Increasingly, what the party calling for tenders do is they go complain to the CCCS, the Competition and Consumer Commission, CCCS. And what CCCS does is investigates. The party calling for the tender does not get implicated because it's the guys responding who are implicated, right? And it tends to be a lot of it in construction, the construction industry. And just this year, we've had 2 decisions already on that area. So depending on who you are, how big your suppliers are that you're calling your tenders from, you will want to think about very seriously just taking it to the regulator, because it's about cleaning up the environment. So just coming back to the point that we were discussing just now, in Indonesia, Ingrid, so what should a business do if it finds itself in a cartel situation? Just keep quiet, change, what should it do?
Okay, similar like Thailand, we in Indonesia we do not have leniency or immunity program, but we do a change of behavior program, but unfortunately it is not applicable for cartel cases. A change of behavior program is like a program that can be proposed or submitted by reported parties in a case aside from cartel, with aims to avoid or release from the KPPU's administrative sanction as a result of that anti-competitive behavior. So what we can suggest, we usually suggest, if a business is engaged in cartel cases, so I think first is being cooperative during the KPPU investigation or examination process, because when the KPPU decide the case, they will consider cooperation from the reported parties during the investigation. Yeah, they will consider them as aggravating factor or mitigating factor. And second one, I think conducting internal audit, to identify which business practices are contaminated by the cartel behavior. If that business practices have been identified, so the businesses can do the corrective measures or internal transformation. And after that, especially if you have a business in Indonesia, you can consider to participate in the KPPU compliance program. Reported party in the cartel case, yes, cannot apply for change of behavior program, but they can apply for the KPPU compliance program. Participation in KPPU compliance program actually, based on their regulation, can reduce the fine sanction whether the KPPU does not specifically mention the reduction in fines. And it is important to note, for example, like the businesses already have a code of ethics, competition guidelines. They can only be considered by the KPPU as the mitigating factors if they are all registered and reviewed, and also reviewed by the KPPU under the competition compliance program held by the KPPU. So participation in KPPU compliance programs, we usually recommend it, if the businesses want to have reducted fines from the KPPU. Kala.
But Ingrid, if someone participates in the compliance program or change of behavior, which is abuse of dominance, but for compliance, must they admit that they have done wrong? Admission of liability?
Okay, for the non-cartel cases, if the businesses want to apply for change of behavior program, they basically can apply in the investigation stage or in the examination stage. If the businesses decide to apply it in the investigation stage, it requires admission of guilt from the businesses. But if they decide in the examination, actually in the investigation, it does not require admission of guilt, but in the examination stage, it requires admission of guilt. So we usually just apply the change of behavior program better in the investigation stage rather than in the examination stage. Kala.
Thanks, Ingrid.
Sorry, Ingrid reminded me that I should also highlight for leniency in Malaysia, you have to admit guilt, right? So to qualify for leniency. But remember also that we also have this right for, in the Competition Act, for people to take civil action against you for damages. So the admission of guilt, you must be careful, this double-edged sword. Right, could come with a follow-on suit, right? Which in Europe and US, I think that's where they are. It's just the lawyers there are just doing nothing but suing people on the basis of this type of cases. In Malaysia, it hasn't caught on. That's good news. All right, it hasn't. I don't know, good news or who. Hasn't quite caught on. But knowing how it is, sooner or later, if something makes money, the lawyers will find a way to go and go after this area of business too.
I think it's just a matter of time, follow-on suits. Quay, if I can ask you, in the Vietnam situation, would it be any different? What should a party do if it finds itself in a cartel scenario?
So in Vietnam, that we do have the leniency program for the businesses involving in cartel cases, but it's a bit different that we prioritize for the first three enterprises that where they come to voluntarily declare and provide the information to the authority. But again, we have to emphasize that the leniency is only applicable if the investigation decision has not yet been announced. So as long as it has been decided to conduct the investigation process, to start the investigation process, so no leniency will be applicable to the enterprises coming to declare or to provide information. So the first three enterprises, those coming to the VCC to declare, they will be in a prioritized, the first one will get 100% exempted from the administrative penalty. The second one will be 60%, and the third one is 40%. But of course that they have to be qualified for the leniency program. So again here that we do see that the authority, they will see mainly 4 criteria to differ, to see whether they can applicable the leniency program to the enterprises. So the first one is the time for the parties to come to declare. So again, I mentioned that it needs to be before the investigation is started. So secondly is the value and the accuracy of the information provided. So as long as if they find that the information is not correct, and then it is something that they cannot consider for the applicable of leniency. The third one is the order. So the order of the enterprises when they coming, who is the first one, who is the second, and who is the third. And the fourth one is the evidence, providing that it is related to the cases. Of course, that we're talking about the leniency, there are 2 types. One is the administration sanctions, and secondly is the criminal sanctions. Because in Vietnam, the cartel activities not only involving in the administrative sanction, but also involving in the criminal sanctions, where the highest penalty, the penal cases is 20 years. So it's very, very high. So again, here that we do suggest that further to the Indonesians have been advised that we need to cooperative, we need to do internal screening check, and then we have to do some certain revision as long as we find that there are some certain risks. And our further advice is that as long as you receive the information or the notice from the authority, so trying to see whether we should be the first one to come to the authority to declare the certain information in order to be eligible for the leniency program. Yeah, just that's for sharing.
Thanks, Kuei. We kind of jumped into the next question as well, but maybe just as a quick summary, right? Assuming no investigation, but you discover, oops, we're doing something wrong. What do we do now? At that point in time, you really got to think very carefully. Look at it. How serious is it? Do you have enough knowledge, bandwidth within your own organization to be able to deal with that issue? Do you need to go and talk to external counsel? And I'm not trying to be rude. External counsels who are experts in their area. Don't come talk to me about construction law. I know nothing about it. Come talk to me about competition law. And I say that as I digress for a second because there have been cases in Singapore where the lawyers representing the parties are not competition lawyers and matters get screwed up. And parties then turn angle and go to competition lawyers too late in the day. It's very hard to save them because all the information has gone to the regulator. Circle back, out of digression now. So doing that internal review is very important. If it is really a potential anti-competitive activity, stop. Make it clear that there is clear evidence. I have stopped. Today is the date. Even as you do that, right, that evidence about stop could be a double-edged sword because that evidence could indicate that actually you participated in the cartel. So finding that balance is very important as well as you think things through. If you don't already have, put in your training program. Identify whether this was a frolic, one little guy who did it, or the company-wide issue. If it's one little guy, take action straight away. If it's company-wide, different action needs to be taken. But these are all very important steps. And then you think about the leniency. And jumping into the next question, which we kind of alluded to, is, so what if the regulator is at your door? Do you let them in? Is there a right to walk in without a warrant? Or do they always need a warrant? What do you say to them? Do you plead leniency then and there? So some of these questions, maybe See Ting again, you want to start off? Thank you.
Okay, so if you find MyCC at your door, what do you do? All right, so just before we find MyCC at door, just reversing a little bit. FYI, MyCC can do investigations by sending notices first. Sometimes it hears things in the market. So it would just send notices asking for more information. Those notices sometimes are informal, right? It's not pursuant to any power. They actually haven't opened a case. Then whether you want to cooperate or not, it's a little bit unclear whether you have to, but most times our advice is we cooperate, even at that stage of providing information to them, but be very careful how you respond. Okay, but assuming you don't get that kind of notice that something is going on, they just turn up at the door. I hope you all have your dawn rate, manual dawn rate policy, all right, so that you know, or at least it's not you, but the receptionist who greets them at the door knows what to do. So the first thing is you should check whether the people coming in are authorized. I mean, there's so many scammers around nowadays. So are they genuine, all right? If so, check all their cards, their authority. In Malaysia, MyCC has power without a warrant on urgent cases to also enter. They have the same powers as police, right? So they can come in. You have to let them in, all right? There is no choice there, yeah? The only thing is that what you do after they come in, because we have acted in dawn raids, multinationals, they have turned up, even very large multinationals, okay? So when that happens, you should know what to do. Don't necessarily give them everything, all right, that they ask. Check what is it that they are trying to ask for. If the scope is, anti-competitive agreements, then just go through the list of what they want. It's really within more or less your scope, right? Sometimes there could be fishing for information by them too, right? Be very careful with privileged information. You have a right to prevent privileged information from being taken by them. But also be very careful that you do not do certain things, like tipping off, right? So what will happen is that maybe your salesman says, oh my goodness, MyCC came and we have this chat group full of information on price fixing, right? Quickly, let's delete or exit the group first thing. I mean, these are real, these things actually happen, all right? So WhatsApp, very, very common. Deletion of information from WhatsApp group, also very common. They can retrieve all this, right? The other thing is quickly tell all the members of the cartel, there is a raid right now by MyCC. All those are criminal offenses. Whilst the cartel itself in Malaysia is a civil matter, all right, where MyCC can only impose administrative fines, and that's the financial penalty. It is not criminal. But the offenses of tipping off, the offenses of obstructing MyCC, those are criminal offenses which you can go to jail for. So the individual goes to jail. Yeah, the other one, the company pays a fine. You see the difference? Yeah, if you are the person in charge. Okay, so you should cooperate with them, give them information, but only to the extent that's required and that's asked by them. Do not necessarily volunteer, information you don't need to, right? Do not stop. So in the chicken feed cartel case, MyCC actually did the raid also at the house of the employees, and they also have that power. Now, coming to the house is really quite a different thing, yeah? I think the employee when MyCC was coming in, was trying to take the phone, all right? I think tried to stop by it was not a very huge thing, it was like unplugging the thing or something. And ICC imposed an extra, I think it was 10 to 15% more fines. It came out in millions, for this kind of behavior, aggravating behavior. So be very careful.
Supawat? Hello, again. For this topic, if you talk about trade competition, regulation, or regulators, I would say very easy again for me to answer because, even they have the power to raid. But from the beginning to, now, they never exercise their power at all. So we feel that they won't, they never and they won't exercise their power because, because of many reasons, because of the manpowers, because of the, the regulation itself, even though the law provides some power to them, but to me, it doesn't protect the officer, individual officer well enough So officers feel that if they conduct this by themselves, they probably get in trouble, get counter sued by the company later on, something like that. So it's a bit hard for them to do so, unless they pass on certain regulation to back up the officers. But I just want to use these opportunities to say something about dawn rate in Thailand. I mean, of course, when you do business in Thailand, it's not just like trade competition related matters. Sometimes it's also related to, for example, the classic one is custom dawn rate. Actually, this will happen all the time. When you get bigger, you import things to Thailand, the amount is getting more and more and more. I mean, the volume is huge, something like that. One day you get visited by custom officers or other officers. So the thing is, of course, they will come with the warrant. But what you have to prepare is they will see everything. Normally they won't come with a list of documents that they want. They come with like a big group of officers, and then each of them go to each department and collect everything. Sometimes even your computer, your notebook, your laptop, your phones, everything. They have the power to do so. So be careful. I mean, when I say be careful is, you just like, if they want, you just negotiate with them a bit, but if they still insist, just give it to them. But what I try to say is that sometimes you need some information to run your business. So in order to prevent any disruption, you need to have copies. Make digital copies or things like that in order for you to run your business after they finish the rate. So that's happened with many of my clients, that they have problem. I have to go to the custom office, office, just ask for the computer back or this thing back from customer, and then when they allow, sometimes they don't allow, sometimes when they allow, when they open the door, I saw like thousands of documents, thousands of computers. So I don't know which one is my client's computer. So that's the thing that happened in realities. Yes.
Just on Supawat's point there, it's a very good point, very important point. You do need to ensure that you make copies. The problem is now very often regulators just ghost the entire computer. Well, actually, that is a good thing. They ghost the entire laptop. But if they take your entire laptop away, then you have a problem. It's not always easy to negotiate. But let me just jump to Ingrid. Similar questions to the rest, and an additional one as to whether the KPPU and actually any other regulator, do they keep asking you information to basically just try to understand your business better? So not because there is a cartel.
I will try to make it very fast, Kala, because it's already 2 minutes left. Yeah. Of course, the KPPU, before the investigation, there is like a monitoring process. During the monitoring process, the KPPU can keep asking information related to your business, products, market share. So there is no any limitation on which information or which documents the KPPU can ask. Sometimes when we argue with the KPPU, this document or this information is not relevant, they will come back to us. They're relevant or not, it is our authority to determine. Yeah, that's all, Kala.
Thank you. Kui.
I'm the last one, so I'm trying to wrapping up this questions topic. Just for Vietnam, I think our advice is that as long as you have a group to come in to your doors, and immediately that the reception should inform the legal department head, so they can immediately, if they are on site, they can join the investigation together to check where the legal proceeding is correct. And then important things is that they should invite the group of the investigation team come to the separate room, like meeting room. Don't let them staying there, and then people will seeing and everyone will feeling nervous, and especially for the employees. So that is the second step. As long as this group coming into the meeting room, and then we're starting to check whether the authority is correct, everything is correct, and we try to buy time whether our lawyers and our legal in-house coming in to screen up what is going on. And during the process, we try to be cooperative as much as possible, but to the extent that if they requesting for something that you think it is very confidential, very difficult to release outside, might be if it is something that you say that we cannot provide immediately because of we don't have the password, we don't have this, that, and trying to make it in the way that it is reasonable negotiation with the authority that we will provide, but at a later stage when our accountant coming back or when our directors coming back. And finally, just sharing that they always taking some things from your end, trying to have the minutes of what they have taken in, and trying to have the signing of the person who taking it, and the status of the documents or the device that taking it. And lastly is the sum-up summary that reporting internally for following up what should we do after this team has living up. So just some summaries because other earlier actions has been advised. So that is from the Vietnam side. Yeah, thank you.
Whatever Quay said and the rest of my colleagues have said applies equally to Singapore as well. We've hit time, but allow me just to say a couple of very quick things. Firstly, thank you for the many, many questions. Some questions I didn't flesh out because they were for other panels. I will pass it on to my colleagues from the other panels to respond to them, like RPMs, very important topic. Question on threshold. If you see at the reception, we have this little booklets telling you what a great group of people we are. But in that booklet, we are also extremely helpful because we have put 2 QR codes. One of the QR codes takes you to information about cartels and information about mergers. They are updated, so the relevant thresholds are stated there. It's very quick, brief info, but you can always speak to us offline, here, email, WhatsApp, at any point in time as well. Last point I just want to leave you with, although there are a million other points, is many of you do not operate just within one country. If you operate just within one country, very easy. But if you're crossing multiple countries, and we're talking about leniency applications, Indonesia doesn't have, Thailand doesn't have leniency. So what if I do a leniency in Singapore and in Malaysia? Then Thailand, how? I don't pay fines in Singapore, Malaysia because I'm the first one. But in Thailand, potentially I run the risk. It's a simplistic example, but what it means is that you have to think through these issues very carefully. And ladies and gentlemen, take competition law very seriously. It feeds us, which means there is work going on out there. So on that note, I say thank you to all of you for listening to us, and have a good break.